Back. For the last 3 weeks, Channel 4 has been screening GBH, the £6 million drama series by Alan Bleasdale. The drama centres on two characters, Michael Murray, a left-wing leader of a fictional northern city, played by Robert Lindsay, and Jim Nelson, the headmaster of a school for disturbed children, played by Michael Palin. In the first episode, Michael Murray called a 24-hour protest strike. Many viewers felt it was a fictionalised account of events in Alan Bleasdale's hometown of Liverpool during the 80s.
We won't pay! Yes! I will see you all on the streets on the 21st. That means you! That means a day of action! Yes! Day of action! 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 Day of action!
GBH is a thinly veiled attempt to rewrite the history of Liverpool Council between 1984-85 by portraying the far left as the major problem facing working people rather than the Tory government. Presumably, Alan Bleasdale believes that Labour councils should act as Tory governments dictate and that we should have paid the poll tax as Neil Kinnock wanted. Presumably, Alan Bleasdale has nothing more to offer than the establishment's lies and inaccuracies. After all, GBH says nothing more than this. Which side are you on, Bleasdale? Is it the Tory and Labour establishment or the trade unionists and socialists fighting for a decent education, health service, housing and jobs for all? Is it boys from the black stuff or the boy with the biggest brown nose?
The Boys from the Black Stuff portrayed with power how working class people tried to cope with unemployment and hardship in the 1980s. It gave a voice to those denied it in Thatcher's Britain. In GBH, Bleasdale has now taken away that voice. Working class people are consigned to crowd scenes, the stupid dupes of sinister lefties. Bleasdale's shift to the right affects his art. The left-wingers are caricatures, straight out of your average tabloid cartoon strip. No wonder Bleasdale is the new golden boy of the Daily Mail and the Sun.
Headmaster Jim Nelson was the only person to defy the 24-hour strike. Michael Murray and his entourage arrived at the school to try and persuade Jim Nelson to go home. Some viewers complained that the scene was distasteful and highly incredible. Others thought that it was inspired drama.
Sir, please, sir, the doing things that the jumping and girls be sick of.
I thought that Alan Bleasdale's GBH was one of the finest pieces of TV drama I've seen in a long time. It was sensitive, humorous, biting, brilliantly directed and edited. The music by Elvis Costello and Richard Harvey was far more than incidental. For me, it was an integral part of the drama. The demonstration, which featured party thugs humming in unison as they stamped on the school roof, was part of the score and took the whole scene to an operatic level. Michael Palin and Robert Lindsay in the lead roles were inspired casting. I'm saddened that people view GBH only in terms of how it relates to events in Liverpool in the mid-80s. There was someone like Michael Murray in every political party, right and left. Perhaps we should judge GBH on its value as a piece of quality TV drama, rather than drawing too many political parallels.
However, the timing of the series has fuelled speculation that it's based on events in Liverpool. Coincidentally, there will be a by-election in Liverpool in July due to the death of Derek Hatton MP. The broad left, some of whom belong to Militant, are battling with the Labour Party for the Labour stronghold of Walton. Several people have drawn parallels with the struggling GBH, including the Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock, who referred to the political and economic GBH done by Militant to the city in his statement about the broad left candidate. The press have been running stories about the possible links between Liverpool and Derek Hatton and GBH, but all of this has been firmly denied by Alan Bleasdale. One caller to Right to Reply suggested that the series should be renamed BGH, or Bleasdale Gets Hatton.
Do us a favour, Murray. No, stay still. You're going bald.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
I'm not. It's only alopecia, and it'll go away. But going mad won't go away, will it? And you're going off your head. You must be. I've had to keep the boys off you, you know. How much longer do you think I can do that? There's serious people who want to get you out there.
With me to discuss the first 3 of the 7 episodes is Peter Ansors, Channel 4's Deputy Head of Drama, Series and Serials, and the former Deputy Leader of Liverpool City Council, Derek Hatton. First, you, Derek, do you think Mike Murray is based on you?
Well, I don't think it's so important or even an issue what I think. I think it's far more of an issue what other people think. I mean, everybody I've spoken to, other than I think Alan Bleasdale and his mum, think it's myself and Liverpool. And the funniest example was the morning after the first episode. I was going down to the Johnny Kennedy show on Radio City to do an interview about GBH. And as I got into the taxi driver, I said, "All right, Derek, you see that programme about you last night?" And it was as though straight away there was a reaction and a feeling that from then on in, that was what it was about.
I think most people do think it's about Derek Hatton. Peter Ansford, what do you think?
Well, it isn't about Derek Hatton.
Sorry, I now see there's 3 people
Yes,
that don't think. I'm sorry, it's just had a 50% increase.
Yes. We wouldn't have commissioned 10 hours of original drama simply about the Derek Hatton story. Alan came to us with this piece as an unfinished 800-page manuscript, and its vision of Britain today and of the way it takes its characters is purely fictional, and the power of it comes through the power of a writer's imagination and a fictional response to the world today, not to any one-dimensional portrait of an individual living in Liverpool.
But can you forgive the entire general public, apart from yourself and Mrs. Bleasdale and Alan, for thinking that it's about Derek Hatton and that time in Liverpool in the 80s?
Well, I think...
or do you think people are being really stupid to make that link?
I think people are looking at what the press are saying, and some elements of the press have chosen to draw this
with all due respect, Peter, I mean, it wasn't the press. For that taxi driver, for example, I mean, people were talking about it the day after everywhere he went, before the press had even said anything about it. The fact of the matter is that's the way people were thinking. When you look at that first episode and you look at the day of action, you look at the words that were said about "we know where you live," you look at the cemetery strike, you look at everything you go through there is all to do with Liverpool. You name me one other council in the country that's got any one of those, let alone every single one added together. The fact of the matter is, Alan Bleasdale, yes, is a brilliant writer. I've got a lot of time for Alan Bleasdale in a whole number of ways, but unfortunately, that the line between fact and fiction here has been blurred a lot, and there's so much fact in it that it then bears a lot of question over whether or not the fiction is really fiction. And unfortunately, with episodes like the one we saw, the little clip where we saw the kids in the classroom and everything, I've never seen ever in my life a situation like that, nor will I ever. But to people outside, given the bits of fact around, they'll start to think, maybe that does happen. Now, that is disgraceful.
That's a misunderstanding of fiction. It's a misunderstanding of drama. You've just said those events didn't exist. We have never said that GBH was a piece of faction. Reading in the papers that it was faction is complete nonsense. Faction is something like Selling Hitler, which is on Thames at the moment. It's a recreation of real events and real people, and the names of the actors are actually the real names of the characters. This is not the case. This is a piece of fiction. We never presented it as faction. It's not a recreation of events in Militant. It's a response of one of the country's leading writers to...
I'm not saying at all that Peter is telling lies. Maybe he's telling the truth, right? The unfortunate thing about it is that everybody does think that. And even during the time of filming, it was a mate of mine who was actually an extra during that particular filming actually said it was an open secret that Alan Bleasdale was talking about GBH meaning Goodbye Hatton. I mean, that is what was being talked about.
You and Alan Bleasdale have chosen to...
What I think possibly Derek might be reacting to is the power of a great dramatist. And what GBH is clearly not about is 10 hours of one individual's life. I think the press are already saying from last night's episode, from the extraordinary turn of events, this woman who comes into his life. Alan, the episode last night was called Take a Message to Michael. Alan does have one message for Derek and everybody, is to say that you cannot judge the message of the series, and indeed the series has a message in that sense from one episode.
But that's
it's like
one episode happened, everyone saw it.
You can't pretend it didn't happen, it was the first one.
It's like
it was the first one, Peter.
It's like judging the result of a football game from the first 13 minutes.
Well, actually, many people do discuss the football games based only on the first 13 minutes.
In fact, if you're an Arsenal supporter, that's probably all you'll get. But the fact of the matter is that people did see that first episode, and it is in their consciousness, and if all the rest is purely fiction, which, by the way, I haven't noticed that anyway. The Runcorn Bridge doesn't come from Yorkshire, by the way. It's just outside Liverpool, and that's been on now 2 out of 3. The fact of the matter is the first one was there, and you saw there actual fact after fact after fact after fact, which was Liverpool and Liverpool alone, and that is fact.
But as I understand it, for example, the militant movement came from inside the city. It's quite clear that Michael Murray is in a situation of being surrounded by a group that basically comes from outside a city.
But it's funny that I came up with about 8 or 9 facts before. Not one of those were militant. You've mentioned militant about 4 times so far. I haven't mentioned militant, and I haven't found anybody in Liverpool that's mentioned militant. There's other things that are concerning them far more. The ones that I said before, that they actually can see there and identify with Liverpool, and they know that yet again one of these dramas, and there's been a few of them around, are doing Liverpool a bad name.
Now we know from Peter that it's nothing to do with Liverpool or yourself, but one way or the other, why does it matter? Why is it important?
It matters what people think, doesn't it, Rory? It matters what people think in Liverpool and the way they perceive it, but it also matters what people in the rest of the country perceive it, the way they see it. And I've been in London now for a couple of days, and again, lots of people are talking about it, and without exception, people are saying the programme about you and the programme about Liverpool. And people then, they get the fact and the fiction mixed up, as we all do, and they start to build up an image in your mind. And that image doesn't give Liverpool a good name at all.
You think it's detrimental to the general perception of Liverpudlians?
I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Peter, what do you think about that? Do you think it's unfair on Liverpudlians?
Well, Liverpool is never mentioned. It's not set in Liverpool. Robert Lindsay, who plays Michael Murray, was told not to give any hint of a Scouse accent.
Well, it wanders all over the place. And there aren't many cities in the north with a Runcorn Bridge leading into it.
There is absolutely no direct identification with Liverpool. What I think other people have been upset by is the fact that we have the author of The Boys from the Black Stuff apparently being very, very critical of certain elements of the left, of the hard left, in a way that they find quite shocking. The explanation that they're giving is that this is an abandonment on the part of Alan Bleasdale of his true roots.
But you see, with all respect, again you're mentioning the left. Again, I haven't mentioned that. The examples that I've given, the examples that I've given are nothing to do with militant, and they're nothing to do with the hard left. The ordinary, everyday examples that you see on that GBH, which are exactly the same as examples that happened in Liverpool between 84 and 87. And I haven't mentioned Liverpool or the hard left once yet. You've mentioned it dozens of times.
Thanks, Derek. I'd like to ask Peter, why Alan Bleasdale's denied it's anything to do with Liverpool, or Derek Hatton and Channel 4 yourself has denied that. Why is it such a big deal to deny it? Why not say, yes, it is based loosely on those events?
Because I think it's terribly important to establish the right of the individual writer and his imagination to occupy a particular space on television. If they are merely doing it through documentary and through factual drama, there is a great loss. The marvellous development of the character of Michael Murray, the comedy that enters his life, the tragedy, the fact at the end of the day you cannot forgive this man for what he's done, but you end up loving him, could only be done through a dramatist's art and not through a reporter's art or somebody who's merely out to get a particular individual. It's a broader vision, it's a larger vision. That's basically what the viewers are responding to, and the press and the public.
But Derek, you're a PR man and an accomplished self-publicist, some would say. What about the old adage that all publicity is good publicity?
See, I'll repeat what I said at the beginning, Rory. I haven't yet said it was about me. I'm saying what everybody else says, without exception, apart from the 3 people we've named. And that's the point. That, you know, Peter can sit there and, fine, we can all sit down and have an academic discussion about what it should be or what maybe it was meant to be. The fact of the matter is, whatever you say, Peter, the fact of the matter is that 99.9% of the people who are watching it, and those who are not watching it because they discussed it at the first episode, think that it's about Derek Hatton and think it's about Liverpool.
And do you think the fact that people think that is good for the series, it's good hype?
I think it's terrible for Liverpool.
But do you think it's good for has it been useful
for
the series?
Well, obviously, I'll tell you what, probably far more people are watching it out of curiosity now than would have done before. There's no doubt about that.
I'm sorry we've run out of time. Thank you both very much, Peter Ansell, Derek Hatton. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we've got time for. See you next week for the last Right to Reply before the summer break. Goodbye.